Hello fellow haters of the blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to a new installment of Heavy Contrast Marines, a series where I try to paint a space marine to the highest level possible using just contrast paints and highlights. And in this episode it's time to delve into the pure excess of the most famous Slanesh servants in the 40k universe, the Emperor's Children. And I came up with a very cool freehand to do on their armor to simulate it's made from stitched flesh. So let's not wait anymore and let's get cracking. So as you can see, we're starting from a base coat of Wraithbone spray. I also did a very quick layer of the Wraithbone base paint over all the areas that didn't catch the spray very well. And now I'm just going to paint almost everything grey. I'm taking Mechanical Standard Grey and I'm going to paint all the trim and all the panels that I don't want to be pink. Be as careful and as neat as you can when doing the trim around all the parts that will be pink. We can later correct it with Wraithbone again, but it's a pain because it doesn't cover really well. And also with Corax White, I'm going to pick up all of the rigid tubes and joints in the armor. Now everything is base coated with the appropriate colors. We can now move on into the first contrast step. That will be Black Templar over all those parts, including the white here, and of course all the trim. You just need to be very careful when you're doing the trim. Try not to get out and into the Wraithbone base coat. If you do, it's not really that big of a deal, but it will require more cleaning up and more work afterwards, so if you can avoid it, do it. All our black is now done, and I'm going to base coat all the contrasts, all the pink areas using a mix of 3 parts Dark Old Flesh and 1 part Volupus Pink. Our layer of Dark Old Flesh and Volupus Pink is now dry, and as you can see, is probably not my best work, but I didn't care very much because, first of all the trim was around causing some problems, and also I'm going to do quite a lot of work on this panel, so it wasn't really that important. First of all, I'm going to glaze Kislev Flesh on the upper parts of those panels. So this is the kind of consistency I'm going for. So I'm going to highlight towards the top, very slowly, working the Kislev Flesh. In thin layers. So, as you can see, always towards the top panels. And along with those glazes, I'm going to edge highlight all the panels. This edge highlight doesn't have to be the thinnest, just a way to define all the panels on the armor. With my first highlight of Kislev flesh now done, I'm going to glaze a bit of volupus pink into the lower parts of the panels. This is the sort of consistency I'm going for. And I will just do just what I did in the upper half, but with volupus pink, brushing from the upper side into the lower part. As you can see, I'm covering all my edge highlights on the lower side with this, but on the second layer I won't. So I'm going to do a second layer of this, and as you can see, I'm more concentrated and more focused. And now it's time to have a bit of fun, because I want these panels to look like they are flayed skin. And to emphasize that look, I'm going to take fire slayer flesh and paint lines as they were made from stitched parts of flesh. And as you can see, you can maybe see there's a bit of a line here where this contrast didn't set properly. So I'm going to take advantage of that and apply my lines, emphasizing those. This is fire slayer flesh, as I told you, and I'm just going to paint lines with this. And as well as those lines, I'm going to make the stitched lines. So I'm going to make small perpendicular lines to those. So with that done, it doesn't look particularly well now.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
But we still have more things to do. I'm going to take Kislev flesh again, and I'm going to first of all define those better. I'm going to highlight the holes where the string punctuates the skin, and also edge highlight the separation between the skin parts, patches, like that, and like that. So with those highlights done, I'm going to take Raka flesh and I'm going to paint in the string used to stitch together those pieces of flesh. So you want to paint a line of Raka flesh inside the line of fire slayer flesh. You're probably going to ask me what brush I'm using, so just take it out of the way. This is my Rosemary & Co. Series 33 size 2. And you can see just with that detail added, this looks much better. With that out of the way, and now I know I like how big those stitches are and how they are placed, I'm going to take flayed one flesh and I'm going to edge highlight all the pieces of skin, especially here around the where the stitches come into it. And here on the top, because it's a very rounded part, I'm going to place in a highlight here. I'm just taking flat one flash, I'm just thinning it down and just painting the highlight. And now for the last step on the flash pink part. I'm going to use palette with flash and I'm going to both highlight the stitches, so just dots at the end of each stitch, and also the brightest highlights on the skin parts. Finally, I want to add a bit more contrast, and now that I know what everything is, I'm going to take again the glaze of Bulletproof Pink, like that, and I'm just going to gently and very carefully apply just a couple of layers of this, each taking less and less space to the lower part. That will also help make that edge highlight a bit thinner if you want. Just be very careful. I just want to make it a bit more pink. And I will also add a bit of this towards the lower sections of the rest of the skin patches. I've finished painting all the fleshy bits of the armor and I'm going to highlight all the black. For this I'm using Thunderhawk Blue and I will just do a very simple edge highlight with this. Our highlights with Thunderhawk Blue are now done. I'm going to move into the next step of highlight. This is Fenrisian Grey. And we want to do with Fenrisian Grey is smaller edge highlight, just concentrated towards the edges and corners of each line. If you can make a thinner edge highlight than you did before, do so, but that's not necessary really. The Fenrisian Grey highlight is now completed and I'm going to step out of the black armor for a tiny bit because I want to paint the first highlight of the rigid rubber parts and all the tubes, and for this I'm using Administratum Grey. And I'm just going to pick its ridge with Administratum Grey, just like that. With that highlight done, I'm going to move into Fluent Grey, and I'm going to use this as dots, and I will highlight both the rigid tubes and the armor. That last step is now finished, and I'm going to paint all the blue details. That is his hairpiece, the eye lenses, and the cloth, whatever. So for this I'm using Achillean green, and also just note I clean all the details with Corax white. So I'm taking Achillean green for those and just apply it all over those details. For the eyes I'm going to try to apply them in this direction so more paint gets deposited at the back. Oops. That's a bit too much. No problem, just absorb it and move on. While the Achillean green dries, I'm going to take wildwood and I'm going to paint all his belts with this. I won't paint those. I will just paint the belts. I'm going to apply another contrast layer, and this will be skeleton horde mixed with a contrast medium on a 1:1 ratio, and we'll apply this over all these patches, over all his holsters, just create a kind of creamy white leather effect. With all those contrast layers now applied, I'm going to start highlighting all the blue details. I'm using for this Temper God Blue, and I'm just going to do an edge highlight of this. Also with Temper God Blue, I'm going to pick up the front of his lenses. With that highlight done, I'm going to move into Bahar of Blue, and I'm just going to do exactly the same thing I did, and I'm just going to edge highlight, but this time just going further down into the cloth and more focused towards the tips of his hairpiece. I will also try to pick up just the very front of his eyelenses with this. With that highlight done, I'm going to move into the last one. This is Fuan Gray, and I'm just going to apply it to the very most exposed highlights. And I'm using this kind of consistency, and I'm going to do a very small highlight. Okay, moving my brush in the direction of the highlight, which in this case I want it to be downwards. And again, this time I'm going to do the smallest dot possible just at the front of his eyes. Now, before finishing both the headpiece and the cloth, I'm going to paint a small dot of white in the opposite corner I did highlights. With the highlights done on the teal part, I'm going to shade a bit more those two pieces because I want them to go from black to almost white. I'm taking a mix of 1 part black temper and 3 parts contrast medium. I'm just going to apply this towards the back of the headpiece here, and quickly clean my brush and blend the transition out. You don't have a hard edge. And I'm going to do the same with a cloth. Apply it upwards, clean the brush, smooth out the transition. I will apply several layers of this until I get to a very dark teal. With each subsequent layer, just pick up less and less area. With the blue finished, I'm going to move into the cream leather part. For this, I'm going to first retouch shade them using wildwood. I'm filling my wildwood with just a tiny bit of water so it flows nice and smoothly out of the brush. And I'm just going to put this wildwood into all the crevices. Just to get a bit more definition out of those shapes. And now to finish off the bone details, I'm going to just edge highlight them with pure white. With the white done, it's now time to move into the brown leather. For this I'm using Bane Blade Brown, and I'm just going to do an edge highlight with this. And I will also add just a bit of random scratches and weathering, especially towards the highlight areas. Just like that. For the next highlight on the leather details, I'm going to use Karak stone, and I'm going to do exactly the same, but obviously taking less area. And now finally going to take Flayed 1 Flesh, and I'm going to do the last highlight on the leather. This will be just concentrated towards the most prominent parts, and again kind of using a stippling motion just to give the impression of weathered and beaten leather. But this time I'm just focusing it towards the very edges. With the leather done, there's just all the metallics left, and for this I'm going to base coat all the steel parts using Iron Breaker. And I'm going to paint all the gold details using Retributor Armor. You can paint as much or as less gold as you want, but I'm just going to pick the back of the bullets, and the decorative piece on his bolter. With all our metallics now base coated, I'm going to wash them, all except this piece of gold trim, and I'm going to use a mix of 1 part black temporal and 3 parts contrast medium. I'm going to apply this over all the steel details, all the brass details on the bolter shells, and of course over all the bolter. With that wash now almost dry, I'm going to apply another one. This is Gilliman Flesh, and that will be just on this detail because this is the only gold detail that I've chosen to do. But if you apply more gold details, of course, you just apply your Gilliman Flesh all over them. And as the last step before highlighting all the metal details, I'm going to apply a different tone to the main casing of the bolter. I'm going to take Volupus Pink, thin it down to a glaze consistency. You see how thin it is there? And I'm just going to apply it towards the lower part of the casing, just as we did with the skin. Brush it downwards, just to apply a hint of pink to that metal detail. That glazing with Volupus Pink is now done. I did 2 or 3 layers until I got this lovely pinkish hue to the lower part of the metal. And now, as a last step, I'm going to highlight every single metal piece using Stonehouse Silver. I'm just going to do an edge highlight, the gold, and the steel. And with that last step done, the base paints itself magically and the model is finished. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had really good fun painting this. I tried to give the Emperor's Children color scheme something different, something that makes it unique, and I'm really happy with what I came up. I'm extremely pleased with this paint job, and I really hope you try doing it because it's very good fun and looks amazing. So, as always guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye! Do you like my videos and want to help me? Well, there are several ways you can do that. You can follow me on social media. You have all the links to my social media in the description below. You can also check all my affiliate links in the pinned comment of this video. Use those links in your next hobby purchase and help me without any additional cost to you. But most importantly, there is Patreon. You have the link to my Patreon in the description below and in the pinned comment of this video. Patreon helps me do all the cool projects that I want to make and helps me improve the quality of my videos. Don't be afraid, no content will ever be hidden behind a paywall, but it's a nice way to help me and you will get something back for your generosity. As I said guys, thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to Ben Morin, Charles Armitage, Christophe Moret, Daniel Figueredo dos Santos, Michael Boyer, Victor Domen, ILJN, Brett Sillinger, Chad Sansing, Kieran O'Murthile, Dominic Trevizo, Dr. V, Eldrick Edge, G4, Jonathan Ekelund, Josh Simpson, JT Butler, Kevin Sulas, Kid Leonard Lindemann, Manuel González Rodríguez, Manuel Virela Partida, Michael Young, Richard Kwiatkowski, Sasha Park, and Shini for being the coolest persons in the planet. Be like these fine folks, join my Patreon, and take control.